Did I scare you? Good, because we're about to talk about some scary shit today. Today we are talking about a serial killer. And so if you get scared of this kind of stuff, time to head out, homie. In my video last week about the Bermuda Triangle, I talked about how I was planning to do a really scary video in the spirit of Halloween about this serial killer, but it started freaking me out, and then I thought, like, if I'm slightly freaked out, then like I'm gonna scare all my audience really bad. So I decided not to do it, but then I got so many comments from you guys saying, please talk about the serial killer. I was getting Snapchats, Instagram comments, literally Twitter, everything. Like, people were emailing me like, who is the serial killer? I want to at least look it up for myself if you're not gonna do a video about it. So I was like, maybe I will do a video about it. So the other day on Twitter, I did a poll and asked you guys if you'd rather see a video about the serial killer, moon signs, or a drunk me reacting to my own videos video, and serial killer like dominated. So that's what we're talking about today. Now I feel like this would have been perfect for before Halloween. Obviously I missed Halloween since it's November 3rd. But if you guys end up liking this video or like creepy videos in general, I love this kind of stuff. So just give me a huge thumbs up so that I know to continue making videos like this. I was really worried about scaring you guys because I get so many comments from you guys that are like, oh, Kendall, I watch this at night when I'm trying to go to sleep and now I can't sleep. And I'm like, girl, you watched this video. You clicked on it yourself. This was your fault, not mine. But this is your warning. If you're not used to scary stuff, this will scare you. So don't watch it if you don't like that kind of stuff. Serial killers. What is up with our fascination with serial killers? Our world is fascinated by serial killers because they're so hard to understand, and it's just so interesting and bizarre, and obviously really sad, but also just really creepy and weird and interesting. So if you like creepy, weird, interesting stuff, you're really gonna like this video. I'm a huge fan of the show Dexter. If you've never watched it, I suggest giving it a try. It's about a serial killer, but he's like a good serial killer, if that exists. It's like my favorite show ever. It's not too gory, honestly. It's really not. Like, it doesn't bother me at all. It's less gory than like The Walking Dead even. Actually, I just watched the first episode last night with my sister because I'm trying to get her to watch it, and I just was reminded about how much I love it. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do the video on the serial killer today. And the serial killer that I'm gonna be talking about is H.H. Holmes, who was America's first serial killer. I mean, at least on record. You might actually be kind of familiar with this story if you've heard of the Murder Castle or the Devil in White City, which I think they're going to be making a movie soon. I've heard that Leonardo DiCaprio is working on something with someone and they might be making a movie, which this story would make an amazing movie, really. It would be such a good idea for them to make it. And American Horror Story, one of the seasons was like based on this Murder Castle. So H.H. Holmes was originally named Herman Webster Mudgett, which isn't the most like exciting name for a serial killer. And he had big plans for himself, so he changed his name. He would later become Dr. Henry Howard Holmes. He was born in 1861 to a pretty affluent family in New Hampshire. Although his home life was allegedly not that great. His dad was somewhat abusive. He grew up in a very like strict religious home. From my research, there's also been some reports that he was like bullied and didn't have the greatest childhood. So that would kind of make sense about why you'd go and turn into a serial killer maybe. He was unusually intelligent from like a young age. Like, people always knew there was kind of something different about Mr. Mudgett. People always kind of knew something was off about him, I guess. When he was a kid, he allegedly was performing surgeries on animals from a young age, dissecting animals, probably killing animals, but not telling anyone. He expressed interest in medicine and knew he wanted to be a doctor. When he was only 16 years old, he got married and had his first son. Just keep in mind, this is a long time ago and that was pretty normal. So in 1882, he registered in med school at the University of Michigan, where he studied anatomy and chemistry heavily. Obviously was very interested in bodies. So not only was H.H. Holmes a serial killer, he was also a scam artist. In med school, he would steal cadavers, which are bodies that are used to like experiment on, for people to learn on. They're like dead bodies of people that donate their bodies to science, and they're real bodies that surgeons practice on, which is good because we want them to practice before they take a knife to us, correct? Yes. So that's the point of having cadavers, and he would steal the cadavers. And then he would take out fake insurance policies, life insurance policies on just made up people, just whatever. This person is named Robert Billingsley, and that's like a real name, I think, for someone. He would take out these fake insurance policies, and then he would take the cadaver bodies, he would disfigure them, so basically alter their appearance a ton, like with acid, and he would change it so you wouldn't be able to even see who they are. So then he would claim that these people were killed accidentally, and he'd get the money from the fake life insurance policies that he set up, which, keep in mind, this is the late 1800s. You could get away with like anything back then. It was not as it is today at all. Oftentimes serial killers are so smart, because they're very smart people. Normally they're very like almost freakishly intelligent. They normally don't end up finishing college or let alone med school or anything, because they're just like too smart for it. So normally they don't graduate, so it's kind of rare, but he did graduate. He graduated college in only 2 years in 1884 and became a doctor. Dr. Henry H. Holmes. He changed his name and it was Dr. H.H. Holmes. His marriage with his first wife ended, and he was super crazy with the marriage thing. Like, he married a ton of people and didn't divorce any of them. As soon as he was done with one, he would just go marry someone else. And like, obviously the systems weren't as good back then, so you could like get away with doing that. So after deciding to ditch his wife and kid, he decided to go around the country and just go to different cities and kill people. Innocent civilians, mostly children and women. Whenever anyone accused him of doing anything or he was questioned in any way, he would completely deny everything, and then he would quickly just leave town, like just get out, bye. Back then you could really disappear like that. You could just leave. I guess you can do that nowadays, but it's a lot harder with the technology that we have. So in August of 1886, he arrived in Chicago, and that's where the majority of his story takes place and where the murder castle was built. We're almost there, guys. I'm almost to the part about the murder castle where it gets really fucking weird. So while he was there, he came across a drugstore that was owned by a woman named Elizabeth S. Holton. So as most scam artists do, he disguised himself as this total gentleman, and he was a hard worker, and he ended up getting a job at the pharmacy. So then Elizabeth Holton's husband just randomly died, which was odd. But after he died, he offered to buy the drugstore from Miss Elizabeth S. Holton, and she agreed. And while he was there, Miss Holton disappeared and was never heard from again. And whenever anyone asked, he would just say, she moved to California. So he got away with probably another murder. And with his new drugstore, he would sell water that could cure people. With all the money that he had made, he purchased an empty lot across the street, and this is where the murder castle was going to be built. And I know I'm slightly smiling during this, but this stuff is just so interesting that I get like kind of excited, and then I remember that people died, and I'm like, ooh, I'm fucked up. And this land is where he built his huge hotel, which was a whole block long, 3-story hotel, and people started calling it the castle. The building was 162 feet long and 50 feet wide. He relocated his drugstore to the bottom floor of the hotel, and the first floor of the hotel was like very, you know, normal. There's like little check-in, whatever, and the rest of the building, the upper floors, is where the craziness begins. The 2 floors above the main floor were his office, and then just a crazy amount of rooms. It was so sketchy. He made the blueprints for it. He was very involved in the process, obviously, and what people didn't know is he was designing a place to commit his murders without anyone finding out, and make this scary building where people would come to stay at the hotel and get murdered. He would contract people to work on the hotel in certain areas, but would never explain to them what they were building or what the whole point of it was, or why it was so weirdly designed and so many different rooms. If anyone got suspicious of him, or he felt like he had someone around for too long, he would either probably kill them or he would fire them immediately. So that's how he kind of kept the whole thing secret. And he only had one person that he started to trust during this time, and that was Benjamin Pitezel. Maybe it's Pitzel? Pitzel? Pites? Pitzel. We're just gonna go with Pitezel. This was probably the closest friend H.H. Holmes ever had. He, you know, never kept wives. Pitezel was like Holmes's little like minion. He like did all this stuff for him. He knew what was going on, and he just stayed quiet. And so he was like his only kind of friend. So most of the rooms in this hotel were soundproof. Each room was kind of made for something else. Like there's basically different killing chambers with different ways to kill people. Like there was like a hanging chamber. There was a room with acid. There was a room that was all brick, and the only way that you could get into it was a trapdoor in the ceiling. So if someone fell into it, they could never get out. There was no doors, there was nothing, and he would just leave people to starve for days. He had a vault where he would lock people in, and it was such a small space that eventually they would just run out of air and die, like slow, painful deaths. He was all about like slow, painful deaths, which is just something only a really evil person would do. The second floor alone had 35 different rooms. Like, it's crazy, and it was built to disorient people. He like made it almost like a maze so people would get confused, and it was like this sick fantasy. Like, you see why I said this would make a great movie? He had a basement where he had a crematorium, and he had this like chute on the upstairs where he could just put bodies into this little chute, send them down to the basement where he would like do stuff with them. This method of killing is a little creepy, even for me. This one, for some reason, just gets to me. So just want to give you a little warning. This is a little creepy, but this is, you know, just, it's not fake. I was gonna say it's fake, but it's not fake. This is probably not gonna happen to you, but anyway. He would kill people by tying their legs and their arms like up behind them and then their legs down, and he would have this machine like basically slowly stretch their body apart until all their like bones break, and it's like a horrible, horrible, slow, painful death. So this guy was twisted as fuck. I feel like we need a small happiness break because this is getting a little dark. Alright, let's move on with the dark shit. One of his favored methods of killing people were to lock people into rooms, and he'd have a gas line that led directly into the room, and there would be locks on the doors, no one could get out, and he would turn on the gas and slowly listen to them basically die of asphyxiation. Most of the people that he killed were hotel employees and mainly women. So if it can't get any worse, it gets worse. H.H. Holmes, as the scam artist that he is, decided to take some of the victims' bodies, and after they were dead, he would skin them, take everything off their bones, clean them till they're just bones, and put them together as skeletons that he would sell to medical facilities as, you know, when you see like a skeleton, so people that are studying anatomy can learn. He would literally make them and sell them, which today obviously would never fly. He had tons of ways of getting rid of the other bodies, including a crematorium that he made. He would lure people in as hotel guests. There was a specific fair, which was called the Columbian Exposition, and tons of people would come in, and he would go down there and say, "Hey, madam," and just charm his way and say, "Come stay at my hotel. Here's the address. I'll give you a discount, blah, blah, blah." And so these people who would come in for the fair, which, keep in mind, back then, there was no way for them to like call their family and say, "Hey, this is where I'm staying." It's not like they booked this on Expedia, so no one knows where the fuck they are. They go and they find a hotel that night. You can't look anything up or pre-book unless you had a phone number or something like that. So a lot of people didn't have rooms, and he would just go prey on them, get them to stay at his hotel, and kill them. Over the years, he had like 3 different wives, and none of them knew about each other, legally married to them all at the same time. So this guy just gave 0 fucks. He also had mistresses, and one of them was named Julia Smith, and she worked in his building as at the jewelry counter, I believe. He had an affair with her, and he ended up getting her pregnant. Now, she agreed to let him perform an abortion on her if he agreed to marry her. Of course he agreed, but that's never his intention, and neither the baby or Miss Julia Smith were ever heard from again. He had many other mistresses that he killed. He was quite the dude, quite the charmer. When he was on a business trip in Boston, he met a woman named Minnie Williams. Holmes had very many aliases, so he introduced himself to her as Henry Gordon. They started dating and eventually became boyfriend and girlfriend, not knowing that he's a murderer that also has a few wives and couple dead mistresses under his belt. Eventually she moved to Chicago to be with him, and he offered her a job at his hotel, and she agreed and started working there. Somehow Holmes was able to convince Minnie to transfer a deed of a property that she owned in Fort Worth, Texas to a man named Alexander Bond, which was actually one of his aliases. So after he got that, he proposed to her and then had her invite her sister Anne to Chicago to visit. He kind of built up a friendship with her sister Anne and convinced her to go get a file for him out of his vault. While she was in the vault, he shut the door and slowly killed her. She eventually ran out of air. And his fiance, Minnie, also just vanished in that time period. So clearly he killed them both. So in July of 1894, Holmes was arrested for the first time. Not for murder, but he was arrested for selling mortgaged goods to people. While he was in jail, he met a man named Marion Hedgepath, who was in jail for train robbery. While he was sitting in jail, he concocted a plan to get $10,000 off of a fake life insurance policy for himself. He was gonna fake his own death and get $10,000 in life insurance money, which is pretty ballsy, I'd say. And he promised Marion Hedgepath $500 in exchange for a name of a lawyer. The lawyer thought his plan was brilliant and totally went along helping him with it. And unfortunately for them, the plan failed because the insurance company started getting a little suspicious. I mean, Yeah. So instead, he tricked his good friend Benjamin Peitzel into faking his death and getting a portion of the life insurance money. The $10,000 would go to his wife and then would be split between the lawyer, Holmes, and the Peitzel family. They all agreed to it, and this took place in Philly. The plan was for him to set himself up as a inventor named B.F. Perry, and then to be killed and disfigured in a laboratory explosion, which he would obviously, Holmes had access to lots of bodies, and he would find one that would be like the exact measurements of Peitzel, but obviously he would like douse it in acid and completely disfigure the body so that they would think it was actually Peitzel who was B.F. Perry. So if that makes sense, let that just stir in for a second. So the way that he was able to get away with lying about people's bodies and getting the insurance money is, back then there was no fingerprint testing. They didn't have that yet. The most common way that they identified people was by lengths of their bodies, like several measurements that they would take of people to prove that it was them. But instead of faking the death, Holmes decided to kill his friend Benjamin Peitzel, completely disfigure him with acid, and get the insurance money for himself. The wife thought it was all part of the plan and that the cadaver was really someone else's and that her husband was still alive and hiding somewhere, and somehow Holmes convinced her to let him take her 3 kids for, I don't even understand why. They had 5 kids total, and he took the 3 middle children, leaving her the oldest and the baby. And the 3 kids were named Alice, Nellie, and Howard. So he ended up taking the 3 kids and took them along with him on a journey through America and Canada. He convinced her that her husband was living in London, and he sent her on a pretty similar route to the one that he was on. So she was actually really close to her kids many times but didn't even know it. Sadly, he ended up killing all 3 children. But in all of this confusion, Holmes forgot to pay the $500 to Hedgepeth, who, you know, gave him the name of the lawyer that he could trust. And Hedgepeth was not happy about it. So he tipped the police off and told them about what Holmes was doing and the whole insurance plan and everything, and so he was arrested. So in Boston in November of 1894, he was arrested. Since they didn't have any like solid proof yet, they actually arrested him for horse theft in Texas, which is an interesting way for a serial killer to first go down. They began interviewing the employees in his castle, and some of the employees said, you know, we're not allowed to clean the 2nd floor, we don't really know what's going on upstairs, blah blah blah. On the 3rd floor, they found a large stove that contained hair from Minnie, a piece of a gold chain that belonged to her, and her shoe. So that's how they knew that he killed her and was killing people. They looked inside his vault and found scratch marks of people scratching on the walls before they died. And then they went down to the basement where they found piles of human bones, a pile of clothing, and a dissection table. So pretty creepy stuff, especially for the time, because this, like I said, was America's first serial killer. The only like big serial killer before this was Jack the Ripper, which totally freaked everyone out, but they thought, you know, we're in America and we're safe here, so wrong-o. Holmes personally confessed to 27 murders. Only 9, I believe, were confirmed. So he obviously got the death penalty and he was to be hanged. And right before they were about to hang him, he said he'd only killed 2 people. So no one really knows how many people he killed. Most of the estimates are anywhere between 20 and 100 people, and some estimates go as high as 200 people. He was finally killed on May 7th of 1896. So interestingly enough, the hanging actually malfunctioned and did not snap his neck. It's supposed to immediately snap your neck and kill you like pretty instantly. But he actually hung there and twitched and was like suffocating for 15 minutes, which I think is well fucking deserved. Karma's a bitch, and he wanted people to slowly suffer, so he got to slowly suffer himself. He was so convinced that someone would grave rob him and use him for dissection and like do what, you know, he did to everyone else, that he requested to be buried 10 foot underground in a thing of cement. So it is obviously a pretty creepy story, but a lot of our history is pretty creepy. I'm really fascinated in history, so I really like this kind of stuff, and I find it very interesting, obviously. So let me know if you guys want to see more like this, or if you have any other ideas, drop them in the comments. Make sure you are subscribed if you are not already, so that you don't miss a future upload of mine. And with that, I hope you guys are having a great day, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.
That girl is a real crowd, please. Small world, all her friends